What if I told you there were a few superpowers that you could develop as a founder that would make your business grow to exponential heights? Would that be something you'd be interested in? Find out next on This Has to Work. Okay, Kelly, I think we both believe in kind of founders' superpowers, things that they are incredibly good at that make them more successful as founders, as business leaders, and maybe more successful than others that don't possess them. I think sometimes they don't always recognize those in themselves. But I do want to highlight a few of those that you and I have had kind of several conversations about that you've recognized in founders and I've recognized in founders. But before we do that, did you catch the Entourage reference I made in the intro?
No.
Shoot. God, I'm old. So there's a fantastic episode where basically the manager, Eric, in the show is getting pitched by this guy, and he's one of these old producers of Hollywood. And his style of pitching somebody is he almost ends every pitch with, is that something you think you'd be interested in? And it gets to a point where it becomes like a joke, like a gag line in the whole episode, which is, yes, I'm interested in it. Let's get to the point. Like, you know, all this stuff.
I missed it. I'm sorry.
Well, that flopped. Okay. So moving on. All right, Kelly. So we're going to have this conversation in kind of the form of a list. You're going to list a superpower, then we're going to talk about it. Then I'm going to list one. And I want you to go from like your third greatest superpower for a founder to your first greatest superpower, almost like a ranking list. Sound good?
Sound good.
Okay. Hit me with your first one.
All right. Number 3 would be objectivity. Being able to look at your company as this external thing, this project, this experiment that you're trying to figure out. It's not an extension of who you are. Whether it succeeds or fails is not indicative of your intellect or anything like that, but really being able to objectively look at this problem and try to solve it. I would say that's number 3. Number 2.
Oh, no. I'm going to go number 3. now.
Okay.
Yeah. So like we're going back and forth. Yeah. Right back.
Let's do it.
So, but let's dig into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Where have you seen that superpower demonstrated that really kind of accelerated a founder and what they were able to accomplish?
I would say the best representation I've seen of that recently is probably Daniel Yeboah from Revella.
Okay.
And the reason why is he noticed early on that part of his business model was there was some friction with the incentives of healthcare. Right? We know in healthcare it's incentivized we're fee for service at the end of the day. But he was really leaning into value-based outcomes. And he could have kept going down that trajectory. He'd already done a lot of work there, a lot of relationship building. But if you were to just look at the market, listen to what investors were saying, zoom out and like look at what the broader potential will be, it was signaling for him to make a pivot, and he did. And so he pivoted more towards value-based organizations, accountable care organizations. A lot of founders would not have done that because they'd gotten so far down the road on this this one segment. But he really just looked at what would be the best outcome. Yeah, it would be more work, but long-term, what would be the payoff? And I think that was the best example I've seen in a while.
I think that's great. I also think it's on a lot of levels because his accountability was first and foremost to himself and to his company,
right?
But it was to his employees, his partners, his investors, people that had poured time and resources and energy into it, his long-term success. Being accountable on all of those levels is a big ask. And so for a founder to develop those skills pretty early on and apply them consistently, I can see how that's a huge unlock. Just a quick time out to ask you if you'd please hit that subscribe button. 88% of people who watch our videos are not subscribed to our channel. So if you want the latest on startup news, technology, innovation, or even just business discussions, click that subscribe button. Promise to give you some good content, one long form video a week and several shorts along the way. Hit that subscribe button. Help us reach our goal of 5 new subscribers every single week. Thanks so much. All right, so my third one is going to be self-awareness. So it's totally uncool, very unprovocative. But I do think it's something that many people lack. So when you see people who have it, it sticks out. So if you have this population where you don't see it often, when you do see it, it kind of really resonates or is amplified. And I also think it lends itself to other behaviors that are incredibly important outside of that specific behavior, like empathy, self-control, self-reflection. We talked about accountability, right? I think those two things kind of go hand in hand. And it's also something that I'm bad at, but I'm constantly trying to get better at.
That's very self-aware of you.
What sometimes I wonder if I'm being that self-aware, but yeah, I often find myself reflecting after an interaction or something that I've done and going, okay, did I handle myself correctly? Could I have done something differently, behaved differently? Was I being that self-aware? Okay, Kelly, you're number two.
Number two, I would say curiosity. Constantly exploring inputs, constantly having conversations. I have found Brittany Gray sticks out in my mind, founder of No Bra. What is Brittany's superpower and how it reveals itself in curiosity? She can take in inputs and synthesize them quicker than anybody I have ever seen.
Really?
And not just random information, like information that applies, and she's constantly exploring, but she doesn't allow it to confuse her. So she knows when to chew the meat and to spit out the bones. So definitely curiosity.
That's interesting. It's a signal through the noise, right?
Truly,
so you can assimilate and as much information that's useful, and then disregard the rest of them.
the rest.
Okay. My number two is adaptability. I don't know. This could have been number one.
Okay.
Is the short answer. I don't know if there's a more crucial trait, especially for founders. But the trick to me is staying flexible, which is harder than demonstrating it occasionally or when it's convenient. So you decide you want to do this. Like the Brittany example is perfect, right? I think I know where I want to go. How locked in am I going to be to that for when new information comes in? I'm not willing to assimilate it. I'm not willing to take that on and then combine it with what I already believe. So that adaptability, that flexibility of saying, maybe that isn't the right way. But without being wishy-washy seems to be, I think, the real trick in all of that. So I think that's a big part of it. But like the number three that I listed, my third one, which is self-awareness, I think this one also lends itself to other positive behaviors. When you're really adaptable, I think that you're going to see more sincere collaboration within your team because people understand there's space for it and that they can suggest a different direction or a different path.
Yeah.
And you might actually seriously consider that, or the leadership may seriously consider that. Motivating risk-taking in the staff, I think, is another part of it. Uncovering the best strategy, especially when it's not obvious. So I think those are three other things that kind of superpower lends itself to. All right.
Yeah.
You're number one.
I'm number one. This is definitely my number one. And when I see this in a founder, I just love it. And it's such a delicate balance because you can easily look like a butthole. But it is an appreciation for rigor. Founders who really approach the work like an athlete approaches their sport. And what that looks like, and I guess the downstream effects of that is you as an individual are not shocked when the hard things come. You kind of view them as a way to improve yourself. You know how to weather the storm because you know that there's an outcome on the other side that's valuable. And what's even more impressive is when founders are able to create that type of culture on their team. That is really rare. But if you are able to build a team that appreciates rigor just as much as you do, then you're immovable. Nothing shocks you. Nothing throws you off. So that is definitely my number one.
I like that one a lot. My number one is storytelling.
That's a good one.
And I've talked about this on other podcasts. You and I have talked about this a lot. I envy your ability to tell stories because it is something I'm not good at, and it's something that I have to actively kind of work at getting better doing. And so I have been actively trying to develop that own superpower in myself, or at least a skill, and hopefully someday it becomes a superpower. Because I've come to realize how incredibly important it is throughout the journey of a founder's business life cycle. I don't care if it's raising money and you got to tell a great story about why you're raising money or why they should participate as an investor in this opportunity. Getting the first couple of employees that you can't pay what they're worth, getting people on board as first customers, as pilots, all of that. It comes down to where we see founders having success in those circumstances. They're always great storytellers. And it's something that I've been trying to develop, and I've really been working on it. And in a handful of times since I've recognized that being a deficiency in my own abilities, that I've tried to apply better storytelling, I've tried to make a concerted effort, it has made a tremendous impact. I have walked out of rooms where I've pitched an idea or walked out of circumstances where I had a conversation, and it just, your skin feels on fire because you know it landed. And you know it landed because it was just such a strong message, and it was all because it was just good storytelling. All right, Kelly. So say a founder listening to or watching this podcast has identified one of these superpowers in themselves. They kind of say, hey, I can do that, or that's something maybe I'm really good at. Maybe it's not a superpower yet, but they want to lean into it. How would you suggest that they actually do that? How would they lean into it?
I would say apply it everywhere, all the time, all at once. I think storytelling.
I think that's a movie title.
True. You got my movie reference. I think storytelling is the best example for that, right? If you're good at storytelling, that doesn't necessarily mean it should just be contained to social media content. It should be contained in your updates to your investors. It should be contained in your meetings with your team. Apply it everywhere, all the time, all at once, because it's your gift. It's meant to be used in every aspect of your work and your life.
So flipped around, what if a founder sees one of these they don't currently possess but would like to develop that? How does somebody start to develop that if they don't already have kind of the seedling of that superpower, that seed of that superpower? How do you start to develop that?
You're probably not going to like my answer for this.
Let's find out.
I don't think you do. I don't think you develop it. I think you have your strengths and you focus on those strengths, because as a founder, you have limited bandwidth, you have limited time. Do you actually have time to develop something from nothing? Or do you have time to ride the momentum of what your actual strengths are? And that's just how I view strengths in general.
Okay.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to create something that doesn't exist and probably isn't in your nature,
you will probably not get to a level, if it does not already exist, there probably isn't much you can do to get to a point where it just gives you outsized impact because you're just so good at it. If it's not already there.
Well, there you have it. Out there, you're all superhuman and super powerful as it stands right now. We're suggesting you lean into that, and where you need to develop some of those skills, give it a shot. Understand that you are powerful as a founder, that you have all of these abilities that maybe you haven't tapped into, and that's okay. But for now, that's the episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.